Welcome to adding Airwall gateways to your conductor. For today's session, we are going to walk through adding an Airwall gateway to a conductor. Just for a refresher, an Airwall creates a logical air gap solution. It makes things on a network invisible and protects against cyber attacks. It enables your organization to create a secure, private, easy to manage global connected solution. Using the Host Identity Protocol, or HIP for short, each Airwall has its own unique 2048-bit cryptographic ID and military-grade encryption. It can be deployed on a variety of different platforms. In the cloud, which includes AWS, GCP, and Azure, virtual environments, examples of this would be VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM, along with 5 different hardware form factors. Let's get started. We are picking up this session where you would have left off after deploying the conductor. As you can see here, I've already logged into the conductor, and this is the dashboard view. And you can also see here, we do not have any Airwall gateways deployed yet. And the first step for adding all Airwall gateways to the conductor is to set up basic network connectivity for that gateway. And then second, point that gateway at the conductor for provisioning and onboarding. For this video, I'm going to use my VMware environment, but if you remember, you can also deploy virtual Airwall gateways in Hyper-V and or KVM as well. So I've already deployed that virtual Airwall gateway in my Esxi server environment. And then what I also wanted to say that how to deploy a virtual Airwall gateway in Esxi environments are in another video. So this is the Esxi interface. And as you can see here, I have highlighted the virtual Airwall gateway we will be using. And then by clicking on this black screen, this will open a console connection to the virtual Airwall. And as it states there at the bottom, the login is AirSH. So the username if needed, and the login password would be AirSH. And that is short for AirShell. So let's get logged in here, AirSH. And if we get logged in, let's go ahead and type in the help command. And this is all tab complete as well. But if we type in the help command, we get a list of commands available. And for our purposes, though, I'm going to change this from a bunch of different colors to black and white. So hopefully we can see this a little bit better. So if I go ahead and type color with tab complete, I go ahead and do that. And if I do the up arrow, I can type type help again, and I can see those commands again as well. If we take a look here, you can see some of the basic commands. So you have your ping, your status, your conf at the top, which is where we are going to configure the network parameters, your conductor, so you can get conductor status. And this would be the status from the gateway's perspective. And then your conductor set command, which we will use to point the Airwall gateway to the conductor. If we go ahead and from here now type status, and we can do complete, we see some information about this Airwall gateway. So we can get the model, the platform, we have firmware, and then you can see at the bottom, we do not have an IP address. It is not connected to the conductor. And so what we are going to do is from the CLI here, we are going to add the IP address, the mask again, the gateway, the DNS, and we are going to set the conductor that this will be managed by. So now let's go ahead and configure the IP address. So if we go ahead and type help again, we can see at the top that there is a conf command. So if we type in conf and hit enter, we can now see what we can actually do with this command. We are going to configure the network, so we're going to do a conf network. So if we went conf network, we can do tab completion. And now from the conf network, we can see here that underneath the port groups, we have 1 and 2. We have the underlay port group, and then we have the overlay port group. So in order to get the Airwall gateway on the network, we will need to configure the underlay port group. And that is what you consider to be the outside interface. It is the port group that speaks HIP, so the encrypted Ethernet adapter, and that speaks it on UDP 10500. This is also the port that will be reaching out to the conductor for management, and that is done on TCP 8096. This is also the interface that will be utilizing the HIP protocol to communicate to any other Airwall, whether it's an agent, a server as well, and this will also be used to communicate via UDP 10500, which is HIP, to and through the relay. So by default, the underlay port here, as you can see, is set up for DHCP. We're going to put a static IP on that particular port group. So if I go ahead and type 1, now I can see all the parameters I can enter underneath that underlay port group. For the time being, we are going to use the majority of the defaults, but we need to put an IP address on here. So as you can see there, we have IP addresses, add or delete, and then a number 1. So right now it has an IP address under DHCP. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete, and then I'm going to go ahead and say 1, and I want to delete that. So now there's nothing configured. So if I go ahead and hit the A, now it says that there's 1, and it is for the static. So if I go ahead and type 1, now I can see from an IP address, gateway, DNS, and the mask perspective, how I go about modifying that. So again, what we are going to do is go ahead and configure an IP address. So I will configure I, and then it states here to put it into CIDR format. So that's a slash, 24, 23, 25, and ours is going to be a class C, so I'm going to go ahead and enter 192.168.19.100/24. So that is my CIDR. It is a class C, which is the same really as saying that the mask is 255.255.255.0. So now let's go ahead and configure the gateway. So I hit G, and it wants me to do the same thing. So 192.168.19.254. That is my gateway. And now I need to go ahead and do a DNS, and we'll just go ahead and use an internet DNS for this. Now we need to quit out and make the save for the actual port group. So we did a Q. Now we're going to do a Q again, and then an S for save. So now we're saving all those parameters that we just configured for that interface, for that underlay port group, which is, in this case, Ethernet 0. So once that's done, we can now go ahead and quit. And now let's go back to that status command and see what we have here. So down at the bottom now, you can see that we do have an IP address of 192.168.19.100. So for purpose of validating, let's go ahead and ping our gateway to make sure that we have connectivity to our gateway. And we do. Came back ping OK. And then let's go ahead and ping that DNS out on the internet. and make sure we have connectivity out to the internet. And then also another thing you could do from here is ping the conductor before you actually have it set up. If pings are able to be received by the conductor, or ICMP packets are be able to be received by the conductor, you could try that as well. Now, for me, I'm doing this all in a lab environment. So our conductor is 92.168.19.216. Oops, made a little mistake here. And let's see if we get there, and the ping's okay as well for that one. So this is really good. We are now on the network. We have connectivity for the network. And so the last thing we need to do is set up the conductor. So we need to point this Airwall gateway to the conductor. So if we go back to help, let's go back to our menu, and we can see up there that we have the ability to type in conductor. So if we type conductor, and we can do, again, tab complete, let's go with status, conductor status, and we can see that it's not connected, right? There's nothing connected at this time from the gateway's perspective. But if we go ahead and type the word conductor and just enter, we see that we can do conductor status and or conductor set. Now you can do the conductor set in two different methods. You could type the URL, so we could do a conductor set, and then let's see, we could do an airwall.tempered.io if that was the URL we wanted to go to. And as you see there, we do not need the HTTPS. So you just need the actual URL with no HTTPS, or in our case, I'm going to do the IP address. And again, we do not need HTTPS, so I'm going to go ahead and add that's our address. I'm going to go ahead and add this and then try to connect to the conductor. So right now, we still are disconnected. So it will stay in this state until we go ahead and provision this particular Airwall gateway. You can see that we now have a provisioning request in the recent events. So you can tell, we can validate it. It says Airwall-300V, and a 300V represents our virtual Airwall gateways. If it was a hardware platform, one of our Airwall 75 gateways or 110s, it would actually say that there as well. So if I go ahead and click view, now it takes me to the licensing tab within the conductor settings area. And we can see here at the top our provisioning request, and it's a 300V, and we have an identifier here. It's ID. So what we want to do, just for validation for our purposes here on the video, let's take this down, which we note this is at the end here 7 CCF. So if we go back to the CLI and let's go ahead and do status again, we look at the top here and it says device ID, serial number. Yep, sure enough, 7 CCF. That is our guy. So this is the Airwall gateway that we are definitely trying to provision now. So if we go back to the conductor UI, and let's go ahead and provision this now. So now we will need to checkbox this, and then from the actions, we're going to go ahead and say grant. And now grant, what that did was it synced up our licenses, and it also gave a license to this Airwall gateway. So if I now go back to the dashboard, we can see now again in the recent events that that particular Airwall gateway is back. So at this point we have provisioned it at this point, but we are not yet managing it. It now has its host identity tag, or we call it a HIT for short, from the conductor, but it can't be used yet. Can't be used in any overlays yet. So if we go ahead and click on manage, we can then, now we can give it a name, description, location. So let's just say Airwall 1, description, let's call it a demo, and then location, let's use Seattle, Washington. So if I go ahead and say OK, it is now gone from the recent events, but now we have an Airwall gateway online. So if I were to either click on this Airwalls and look at show all Airwalls, I can see that it is now there, or I could have clicked on here and seen the same path for this particular Airwall. Let's go ahead and click on this Airwall, and it takes us to the description of our Airwall 1, which is our Airwall gateway. So it has basic information about it. It is not utilized yet, so we are managing it. It has been provisioned, but it's not in any overlay networks, it's not in any groups, and not in any relay rules. But it does have its basic information for it. It tells us what version or firmware it's on, and it gives some other parameters. This is where you would then go to start configuring it from the ports perspective. So we configured the underlay port group, and then you need an overlay port group, and that would be discussed in other videos. But at this point, we have brought the Airwall gateway online within the conductor, and it is ready to be laid out, and the additional interfaces, the additional policies, the local devices that we want to be behind here and protect and make invisible are ready to go. And that's it. We're done. Any additional information or advanced settings can be found on our web help page. Thank you.